What happens when a struggling single father, rejected at the door of a five-star restaurant, crosses paths with a reclusive millionaire widow watching from afar instead of walking away? She makes a bold move, inviting the stranger and his child to dine with her. But what begins as an unexpected dinner may just unravel secrets, heal wounds, and lead to something neither of them saw coming. "Excuse me, sir. Do you have a reservation?" The voice of Mater, like a knife cutting through the warm lobby of La Fontaine. His smile was forced, practiced, trying to appear polite, but it never reached his eyes. Cole Morgan stood tall, one hand resting on his daughter Leia's back to protect her. The 5-year-old girl, wearing a soft purple dress with handmade trim, curly hair tied with a ribbon, and holding a small fabric purse that her late mother had sewn many years ago. "I called 3 days ago," Cole said, clearing his throat. "Under Morgan, at 7 Maitreyi barely glanced at the reservation book. "I'm afraid I don't see it here," he said, then closed the leather cover with a soft snap. "And we have a strict dress code. No denim, no work boots." Cole's jaw clenched tightly. He had polished those shoes until they shone. His shirt was spotless, pressed flat with a warm cloth. His hands, calloused from years of repairing engines, were scrubbed clean to the point of cracking. "Today is my daughter's birthday," he said softly. This was the first birthday of hers without her mother by her side. Maitreyi raised an eyebrow. "Unfortunately, we are fully booked tonight, and appearance is very important at La Fontaine." Leia looked up, confusion evident on her bright face. "Dad, why can't we go in?" Cole leaned down to look into her eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll go somewhere else." "But you said this was special," she whispered. "Like Mom's stories." A wave of heat ran down Cole's neck. Every table around them fell silent. A few guests glanced over. Some looked annoyed. Others appeared uncomfortable. No one spoke. No one except her. "I believe you are mistaken." A calm voice rang out from a nearby table. "This man and his daughter are my guests." Cole turned to see a woman standing up from a table near the window. She wore an elegant yet simple dress, dark green like pine leaves, her black hair styled into a glossy wave. She moved with a grace that came not only from wealth, but also from having experienced something. Mother stiffened. "Ms. Davenport, do you really want to turn this into a conversation in front of all the guests?" Her voice did not waver, but it held an underlying firmness. "Because I will, and I will speak very clearly." Mater D swallowed hard. "Of course not. If they are with you, please go this way." Cole hesitated, but Ava stepped forward, extending her hand, not out of pity, but with purpose. "I have a table for 3. If you don't mind sitting with me." Leia opened her eyes wide, looking at her father. Cole didn't move. "Please," Ava said again, her voice softer. "Tonight means something to her. Don't let it end like this." Finally, Cole took her hand. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. They followed her to the table. Leia jumped slightly as the promise of magic returned with her footsteps. Ava pulled the chair for the little girl and asked the waiter to bring out the children's menu and a Shirley Temple with an extra cherry. "Is this a fairy tale restaurant?" Dad Leia whispered, her eyes dancing under the chandelier lights. Cole looked at Ava, who was gently smiling across the table. "Maybe now is the right time, my dear." The sound of cutlery clinking echoed softly as the waiter poured water into 3 crystal glasses. Cole sat tensely, his eyes scanning the lavish restaurant, occasionally glancing at his daughter sitting across the table. Leia swung her legs under the chair, her gaze focused on the napkin folded into a swan shape, surprise gradually replacing her earlier pain. Ava quietly observed, her fingers swirling around her wine glass. She could feel the discomfort radiating from Cole. "I really appreciate this," Cole suddenly said. "You don't have to do that." Ava shook her head and smiled. "You don't owe me anything. I didn't do it out of pity. I did it because I forgot something important. And you reminded me." Cole frowned slightly. "What did he mean when I was 9? Ava gently said, "My dad took me to a little restaurant that he had saved for months to buy. He forgot to check the price. We were kicked out when he couldn't pay. The owner called us thieves." Cole stared at her silently. "That night, my dad cried." She continued. That changed him and me. I swore that if I had the chance, I would never let anyone feel that embarrassed, especially in front of their children. Leia tugged at Cole's sleeve. Dad, do you remember what Mom said about birthdays? Cole smiled. Of course. Peanut, turning to Ava. Leia added, she said birthdays should be like in fairy tales with magic and kind people. Ava chuckled softly, her eyes lighting up. She must have been an extraordinary woman. Indeed, Cole said, his voice deep. The waiter returned with a basket of warm bread. As Leia reached for a piece, her water cup tipped over. The spill spread quickly. Oh no, she gasped. Without hesitation, Cole knelt beside her, blotting the stain with a napkin. It's okay, sweetheart. Accidents happen. Leia looked uncertain. Cole smiled. Even a princess can sometimes break everything, and they'll be forgiven because they are loved. Ava felt a slight pang in her chest, the tenderness in his voice, the way he turned an accident into reassurance. It touched something that had been dormant in her for a long time. As they continued to eat, the mood grew warmer. Cole talked about his work in the garage. Leia jumped in, proudly explaining how she helped organize the tools. Ava listened attentively and smiled. After the main course, Ava signaled to the waiter, I hope you like the dessert. I ordered the special. Soon. 3 plates of food were brought out, each topped with a layer of orange cream covered in dried orange peel. Yila gasped. It's shiny. Cole raised an eyebrow. Looks expensive. Ava chuckled. This is my husband's favorite dish. He says it's like sunlight shining into a spoon. Cole softened his tone. Thank you for sharing that. As they tasted the dessert, the tension in Cole's shoulders faded away. Leia giggled happily. Ava leaned back, watching them not as an outsider, but as someone gently drawn in. Maybe so, she thought. Fairy tales don't always need magic. Sometimes they start with a spilled cup of water and a father who knows how to love. It all began at the bookstore. Cole had promised Leia she could pick out a birthday book, a tradition he and her mother started long before she could read. So, they went to Bell and Pine Books, a cozy bookstore on the corner with creaky floors and a golden bell that jingled when the door opened. Leia dashed straight to the children's aisle, deep in thought about her decision, while Cole followed closely, careful not to step on the stuffed animals and small beanbags scattered about. And then he saw her. Ava stood at a nearby bookshelf, flipping through each hardcover with a furrowed brow of contemplation. She looked up, surprised, then smiled. Yes. Hello again. Cole nodded politely. Ms. Davenport. She pretended to remain silent. Ava, please. Otherwise, I'll feel like your accountant. He gave a light smile, still the cautious smile he had at the restaurant. I didn't expect to see you here. I live just a block away. I came here to think, she replied, holding up the book, and to buy things I don't need. Your birthday book, he said, nodding towards Leia, who was now balancing between 2 picture books and a stuffed unicorn. Ava's gaze softened. She is beautiful. She inherited that from her mother, Cole said, his voice dipping slightly. Ava didn't ask any more questions. She just smiled, returned the book to the shelf, and said, All right, maybe we'll run into each other again. And they did. 2 days later, at the park, Cole is pushing Leia on the swing, enjoying the breeze and her giggles. Then Ava walks by with a large iced coffee and a paperback book tucked under one arm. She waves casually, as if it's just a coincidence. Hey! Hi, Leia shouts. That's the girl from the fairy tale. Ava smiles, steps closer, and asks if she can push Leia on the swing. Cole hesitates, but Leia exclaims, Sure, please. And that was that. From then on, seeing each other became more frequent. At the farmer's market on Sundays, the community concert in the square, even at a hot dog stand during the food truck festival. Each time, Ava made everything seem natural, never forced, never arrogant. She chatted with Leia, asking about her favorite stories, her new sneakers, her favorite superhero. She never overstepped boundaries. And Cole watched. He observed how Ava bent down to talk to Leia at eye level, how she could tie the girl's shoes without being asked, how she never looked at her phone while Leia was talking, and how Leia naturally and effortlessly started calling her Miss Ava. However, Cole still kept his distance. One afternoon, as Leia was busy at the puppet booth, he turned to Ava and said, "I really appreciate what you're doing, but I don't want Leia to get attached to someone who might disappear." Ava looked at him, feeling neither offended nor surprised. "I understand, but I'm not doing this out of charity. I enjoy spending time with her and with you." He didn't respond, just nodded once, the shield in front of him still intact. Things changed quietly one Tuesday night. It was an event at the local community center, screening an old animated movie outdoors with blankets on the grass and popcorn in paper bags. Leia curled up under the blanket next to Ava while Cole sat nearby, arms crossed. Not just watching the movie? Halfway through, Ava leaned toward him and whispered, "I've never told you about my daughter." Cole turned to look at her, eyebrows raised. "She's only 7. Isla. My husband died in a car accident while he was out getting her birthday cake. A drunk driver ran a red light. She hasn't been the same since. She stopped eating, stopped talking. Then we found out her heart was weak. Some congenital defects that no one detected." Cole said nothing, just stared at the screen, his expression unreadable. Ava whispered that she passed away a year later. "And I did nothing else but work, trying not to feel anything until I saw you and Leia that night. And I remembered the meaning of trying to make a night magical." Cole looked at her, his voice hoarse. "I'm sorry." Ava gently shook her head. "You don't have to be like that. Let me join in, even just a little." The screen lit up with colors, laughter echoing around them. But in that brief moment, it was just the two of them, two people carrying their suffering in different forms, connected by the fragile thread of a little girl's joy. That weekend, as they left the playground, a boy fell off his bike near the fountain, the handlebars awkwardly bent, tears streaming from his eyes. Before his mother could react, Cole was by his side. He knelt down, checking the brakes, adjusting the frame, and with a deft wrist motion, reattached the chain. "Okay, buddy," he said with a big smile. Ava stood behind him, silently watching. Not just the action, but also the gentleness, patience, instinct. Something warm blossomed in her chest. Perhaps it was not a mere coincidence. Perhaps it was grace manifested in the form of a moment. The event occurred on an ordinary Tuesday. Cole was changing the oil in a customer's truck when his phone rang. Once, then again, then one more time, until the vibration sounded like thunder hitting the concrete floor. It was the school's phone number, and another number he did not recognize. He answered the third call, his hands greasy, panic rising in his throat. "Mr. Morgan, this is Nurse Hensley from Lakeview Elementary. Your daughter, Leia, collapsed during story time. We called an ambulance." Time slowed down. When they arrived at the hospital, Leia was in a private room, pale, her body tangled in wires, eyes tightly shut. Her little dress was still smeared with paint from finger painting. The doctor, a calm man in his 50s, greeted Cole with words he would remember in his mind for many days after. "Hovan Tamsin, this condition may have been present since you were born, but it is just mild fatigue, shortness of breath, often mistaken for tiredness or exhaustion. Today's fainting spell has raised deeper concerns." Cole blinked, trying to comprehend the meaning of those words. "What are you saying?" "She will need surgery to fix the heart valve. The sooner, the better." Cole's mouth felt dry. "How much?" The doctor hesitated about pre-surgery, post-surgery, and hospitalization care. "This makes sense." Cole nodded once, then sat down before his legs gave way. He didn't ask for the exact number. He knew that the amount was beyond what he could afford. For 3 days, Cole hardly left the hospital. He dozed off in the upright chair next to Leia's bed, holding her tiny hand while the machines beeped and nurses came in and out. He didn't cry, not in front of her. But every time she looked at him with her half-bright, half-dim eyes and tried to smile, something inside him cracked. Ava arrived on the 4th evening, quietly holding a bouquet of pale pink tulips and a paper bag that smelled faintly of cinnamon and honey. "I heard," she said softly as she stood at the door. At first, Cole didn't respond. He looked thinner. His eyes were red. "I'm really sorry," she said, placing the flowers in a vase on the windowsill. I brought cinnamon rolls. I remember you said she liked them. Cole looked at her. Thank you, but we're fine. Ava stepped back gently. I'm not here to intrude. He nodded, then turned back to look at Leia. She was sleeping, her breath shallow but steady. What can I do? Ava asked after a moment of silence. Cole's jaw clenched. Unless you have $100,000. No. She flinched slightly, not because of the words, but because of the bitterness behind them. I just want her to have one more fairy tale birthday, he whispered. Now I probably won't get another chance to see her again. Ava stayed a few more minutes, placing the warm loaf of bread on the tray and gently brushing Leia's hair with her hand. She kissed the girl's forehead, whispering something only Leia could hear, then left without saying goodbye. A week had passed. Cole hadn't showered, hadn't gone home, and hadn't returned to work. He was in the hospital cafeteria sipping a burnt cup of coffee when the phone rang. Hospital Finance Department. We're calling to inform you that a donor has come forward. Please note, the cost of the surgery will be fully covered. Cole almost dropped the phone. He asked who it was. They said the donor wished to remain anonymous. That night, Ava returned. This time, she brought a small hardcover book, classic, with gold lettering on the front, a treasure of fairy tales. Leia was awake, her eyes much brighter than they had been all week. She gasped at the sight of the book and begged Ava to read it to her. Ava sat by the bed and began the story, her voice gentle yet full of emotion. Halfway through, Leia reached out to hold her mother's hand and said, "Last night, I dreamed of you." Ava paused. "Did you?" Leia nodded. "She told me that someone would come, someone who would love Dad, even when Dad didn't believe it then." Ava blinked rapidly, looking down in the page, trying to remember where she had left off, and she said, "I will have a new heart to be able to love many more people." Cole stood at the door and listened. He didn't move. He didn't say anything, but something in his eyes began to change, like sunlight finally touching the frozen ground. The envelope lay among a pile of hospital paperwork and medical instructions on Cole's kitchen table, buried beneath outdated flyers and bills. It had been 3 days since Leia's surgery was confirmed and scheduled, and finally, Cole was tackling the mess he had been too overwhelmed to face. He almost tossed the envelope aside without opening it, assuming it was just another generic letter from the insurance company. But something about the font made him stop. He slipped his thumb under the edge of the paper and pulled out a folded document. It was a summary of the bill from the hospital's finance department. Nothing seemed unusual until he saw it. At the bottom of the last page, just above the line noting the authorized payment source, was a signature he had only seen once before in ink. Ava M. Davenport. Cole froze. He stared at the paper for a long time, as if hoping it would change. The numbers, the total cost of the surgery, the fees listed, every cent was covered by her. He blinked and blinked again, but that name didn't disappear. His chest tightened, confusion rising into a wave of anger. His hands trembled as he reached for his coat. Ava was at the community greenhouse, her hands covered in dirt as she repotted a row of lavender plants. She looked so peaceful, softly humming to herself. It always helped her feel steadier, quite literally. When Cole arrived, he stood silently for a moment, watching her. Then, he held up the paper. "You paid for her surgery." Ava slowly looked up, blinking against the sunlight. She said nothing. "You paid for it," he repeated, his voice louder. "You signed my name behind my back, as if I were a charity case." Ava set the trowel down. "Cole, please. You think I wouldn't find out? Am I too stupid or too grateful not to notice that?" "No," she said, her tone even but gentle. "I hope you understand before things get worse." He shook his head and stepped closer. "I didn't ask for your help. I know," she said, "but I gave because I could, because she needed it." He scoffed, bitterly. "No. You did it because it made you feel better. Because now you can play the savior, as if that erases all the guilt you carry." Ava's eyes flashed, her mouth trembling. "That's not fair." "The fair," he shouted. "I work double shifts. I make lunch for Yayla every morning. I sew the rips in her jeans. I rock the baby to sleep and told her stories. And I promised her that I would find a way to take care of her. And you just need to sign a check and expect to be a part of our lives as if you deserve it. I never wanted to replace you, Ava whispered. No, but he wants to buy his way in. The silence enveloped like a curtain. Then Ava's voice became almost inaudible. My daughter didn't make it. I had the money. I had the doctor. I had everything. But I was too late. She slipped away from me, and no amount of love or wealth could keep her in this world. Cole stood still. Ava continued, I couldn't save her, and I live with that every day. But I saw Laya, and I saw a second chance, not for me, but for her, for you. I did what I wished someone would do for me. Her eyes sparkled. This is not pity. It is sorrow. Find somewhere to go. Cole looked away. His jaw clenched. Ava wiped her hands on her apron and grabbed her wallet. You can repay me later if that makes you feel stronger, but don't punish your daughter for the kindness you can't accept. Having said that, she left. She didn't wait for an answer. Shoulders straight, head held high, but silent tears rolled down her cheeks. Cole stood frozen among the scent of lavender and broken pride. That night, Leia sat on the floor with a small notebook on her lap, her mother's old diary. The notebook was filled with blank pages, but Leia had started drawing in it since the surgery. She called it her new book about her heart. Cole was sitting on the couch, staring at that paper, now crumpled in his hands. His jaw had softened, but his heart was still torn between pride and shame. Leia stood up, quietly walked over to him, and placed a torn-out sheet in his lap. It was a drawing. A small family, a man with rough hands, a curly-haired girl, and a woman with long black hair in a blue dress, standing together under a starry sky. The woman's hand gently rested on the man's shoulder. Cole stared at it. She has appeared in my dreams again. Leia gently said, Mom, the little girl said, we're allowed to love more than one person, right? He looked at his daughter, then back at the drawing. Maybe the fairy tale isn't perfect. Maybe it comes with broken pieces and second chances. But maybe, just maybe, there's still room for a new chapter in the story. It had been a week since the argument, a long week of silence, unspoken regrets, and a little girl kept asking, when will Ava come back to read stories again? Cole had replayed that scene in his mind hundreds of times. His voice was too loud, his words too sharp. Ava's gaze offered no resistance and quietly shattered. He hated himself for that. He hated how pride had built the wall between him and someone who did nothing but care. That morning, he woke up early, not to fix cars, not to pay bills, but to bake. Ava had once told him during a quiet stroll through the market that cinnamon bread reminded her of home. That was the only thing my grandmother ever made by hand, she said, every Sunday. It smelled of love and safety. It turned out that was what he had done. Around noon, he knocked on her office's tall glass door, holding a loaf of bread carefully wrapped in a clean cloth. The receptionist raised an eyebrow, but didn't stop him. Perhaps they recognized his name, or maybe they noticed his gaze, a look that seemed to say, this visit is more important than anything else today. Ava looked up from her desk, startled to see him. She slowly set her pen down. Her office was clean, tidy, minimalist, just like her, but there was a corner filled with children's books and a sketch of a girl holding a balloon. I baked, Cole said simply, holding up the loaf of bread. I remember what you said. Ava's lips parted, but no words came out. Can I sit? He asked. She nodded. He placed the loaf on the low table and carefully opened it. The warm scent of cinnamon filled the room. Maybe it's too sweet, he said. I never measure it right. Ava smiled softly. The aroma was lovely. They sat across from each other in silence for a moment, the kind that has weight and meaning. Finally, Cole took a deep breath. He said I was wrong. I let my pride overshadow the voice in my heart, and I hurt you. Ava looked down at her hands, then back up at him. I'm not sad because you yelled. I'm sad because I don't want you to think I see you as weak. Cole nodded slowly. Now I know. I was so scared, that's all. Scared of not being good enough, to be replaced. No one could ever replace you, Cole. Not with Laya and not with me. At that moment, He looked at her, not like an elegant woman sitting alone in a fancy restaurant or a wealthy widow with everything, but like someone who had lost more than she revealed but still chose to give. "I miss you," he whispered. Ava smiled, her eyes brimming with tears. "I miss her too." They both chuckled lightly. Laughter. "There aren't many loved ones left anymore," Ava said after a moment, "but your daughter, the girl who makes me believe in a new beginning." And Cole reached across the table and gently took her hand. Her fingers didn't move. Ava looked at their hands, then at him. "I don't need another fairy tale," she thought. "I just need someone real." "I am real," Cole said, "and I'm not going anywhere." The loaf of bread still sat untouched on the table, but somehow the room smelled like home. The hallway outside the operating room was too quiet. Even the ticking of the clock seemed to be muffled under the weight of waiting. Cole sat stiffly on the hard-backed chair, his hands tightly interlocked, his knuckles pale. Beside him, Ava sat motionless, her hand gently holding his. He hadn't let go since they arrived. Not once. Not when the nurse took Leia away. Not when the surgeon explained the intricate complexities of repairing the heart valve. Not when Cole's breath caught and he whispered, "Please, bring her back to me." Ava's thumb moved slowly across his skin to a rhythm that only she could feel. Steady. Reassuring. She knew that rhythm. She had held her daughter's hand like this in another hallway many years ago. But this time was different. This time, hope had become reality. This time, love was no longer silent. It breathed beside her. Hours passed. Cole didn't say anything. Ava didn't push him to. Then the door opened. The surgeon stepped out, his scrubs stained but his eyes still bright. He took off his cap and offered a tired smile. He said she did very well. The valve was repaired. No complications. Cole dropped his head into his hands, breath leaving him like wind in a storm. Ava wrapped both arms tightly around him, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to cry. Not from sorrow, but from feeling an overwhelming sense of relief. They had to wait another 2 hours before they were allowed to go into the recovery room. Leia lay small under the crisp white sheets, her chest bandaged. The recovery room. Leia lay small beneath the pristine white sheet, her chest bandaged, her cheeks slightly flushed, her eyes slowly opened, then blinked to adjust to the light. "Daddy," she whispered. Cole leaned down to look at her, his voice choked up. "Right here, sweetheart." "Ava, is that you?" Ava stepped into view, her hand gently stroking Leia's curly hair. "Of course, I'm here. Sunshine." Leia smiled weakly. "Is this your new heart?" Cole smiled softly, tears still lingering on his cheeks. "It's still that heart. Peanut, just stronger now." Leia blinked, still dazed. Then she turned to Ava. "Did Dad tell you any fairy tales while Mom was sleeping?" Ava looked at Cole, caught off guard. His cheeks flushed, a rare blush passing over his face. Ava smiled and leaned closer. "He doesn't speak to you with words, but with the way he looks at you." Leia's eyebrows furrowed in confusion. "What does that look mean?" Ava's voice became softer, her eyes not leaving Cole. "It says, you are someone worthy of love." Leia smiled again and closed her eyes, sinking into a peaceful sleep. Cole and Ava sat beside her, together, their hands intertwined. The next few days passed like gentle waves. Leia grew stronger with each dawn. She could sit up, eat applesauce, and even watch cartoons. The nurses loved her dearly. The doctors smiled every time they entered her room. Cole never left her side, but he also never stopped glancing at Ava, who was sitting in the corner of the room with books, flowers, puzzles, anything that brought joy to the room. One afternoon, while Leia was sleeping, Ava stood by the window, looking out at the garden below. Cole quietly approached her, hands in his pockets. "She is everything," he said softly. Ava nodded. "You know that." He looked at her profile, the sunlight illuminating the curve of her cheek. "You too." Ava turned to him, surprised. Cole took her hand again. He had spent too much time being afraid of needing someone. He thought love made you weak. But you showed him it made you brave. Ava blinked slowly, emotions welling up. You not only helped, Leia, he continued, you reminded him that he is not alone, that he is not like that. Ava reached up and touched his cheek. Her thumb glided over the faint outline of scruffy stubble. So did I. The day Leia was discharged from the hospital, the nurses gathered to wave goodbye to her. She wore a bright yellow dress and a sparkling headband, tightly holding a new book that Ava had given her, The Girl with the Strongest Heart. As they stepped outside into the sunlight, Cole once again took Ava's hand. This time, not because he needed it, but because he wanted to. Their family wasn't built in the usual way. It wasn't planned or perfect, but it was real, and it was beginning. The shimmering gold La Fontaine sign hung above the entrance, where a year ago Cole had stood frozen, gripping Leia's hand, hope in his chest, shame in his throat. Today, everything was different. Balloons lined the walkway. A hand-painted banner read, Happy 6th Birthday, Leia. The servers smiled warmly. The same maitre d' who had once turned them away now bowed politely. Welcome back, Mr. Morgan, and happy birthday, young lady. Leia beamed, hugging her ukulele tightly. Her yellow dress sparkled like the tulips Ava had once brought to her hospital room. Cole, adjusting his tie, still looked at her. Healthy, smiling, vibrant. Ava stepped in beside them, radiant in her soft blue dress. She was no longer standing apart. She stood alongside. They sat close to the fountain, candlelight flickering. A 3-layer cake was brought out, strawberries and cream, Leia's favorite. She insisted on lighting the candles herself. Then, Leia shyly stood up. This song is from my first mother, she told the guests. She sang it before bed. Now I sing because I have two who love me so much, and one who helped heal my heart. The room fell silent. She strummed the ukulele off-key, but joyfully. By the end, many were wiping tears. Cole reached down under the table, squeezing Ava's hand. She leaned into him, her eyes sparkling. Their home nestled among ivy and wildflowers, the backyard full of tulips and a wooden swing that Cole had built for her. Inside, laughter. The backyard was filled with tulips and a wooden swing that Cole had built for him. Inside, laughter echoed. Ava had moved here 6 months ago after a quiet walk and a question. I didn't want to be a guest in your story. I wanted to help write it. She painted Tuong as planting marigolds and building something with them, not out of wealth, but from memory and hope. And with the money once protected in trust funds, Ava created the Tim Ella Fund, a scholarship and health grants for children with heart disease, named after her daughter. There was no press release, just a gentle letter sent to local hospitals. Strong as Ava herself, she said that helping a child felt like giving Ela breath again. That evening, after the guests had left, the three walked to the park. The sky glowed in soft amber hues. They took off their shoes and sat on a wooden bench beneath the tall oak trees. Leia strummed her ukulele, humming something like a lullaby. Ava leaned against Cole's shoulder. He gently shifted closer to her. Steady. She's growing up too fast, Ava whispered. Faster than I'm ready for. She looked at their tightly clasped hands, strong, scarred, and smiled. He brought magic into our lives, but not the kind of magic that comes from standing up when he could have walked away, but from believing we deserve to stay. Ava blinked, a tear rolling down. Thank you, Cole said, for bringing a fairy tale to a place I thought only had hard days. Beside them, Leia's song hung in the air like a ribbon, and as night fell, Ava clung to the man who once doubted his worth and the girl who gave her a reason to hope again. Because fairy tales don't need magic, just someone brave enough to believe. Everyone deserves a night to feel like a princess. This story reminds us that even in a world that often turns away those in need, compassion still has the power to open doors and hearts. We witnessed a single father's quiet strength and unwavering love for his child, and how a single act of kindness sparked a ripple of change in the most unexpected place. His courage to ask for help, and the grace of those who chose to see his humanity, remind us that dignity should never depend on status or wealth. If this story moved you, let's lift him up with our support. What would you do in his shoes? Would you have had the same bravery? And more importantly, how can we, in our own lives, offer a little more kindness to those who might be struggling in silence. To the father in this story, we hope you keep walking forward with your head high. You've already taught us so much about love, humility, and quiet strength. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to Touching Tales Hub for more real, raw, and soul-stirring journeys. Let's keep sharing the stories that remind us what it means to truly be human.